Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the stars through the crystal viewing screen. His ship was one of the largest in the Vorthak fleet. The crystalline hull gleamed with a cold blue light that struck fear into every species they encountered. For 3,000 years, the Vorthak Empire had ruled the galaxy. Their ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their warriors more skilled than any other species. Every world they visited had two choices: join the Empire or be destroyed. Most chose to join without fighting. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. Veltar's crew moved with practiced efficiency, their tall gray bodies moving silently across the metal floors. Each Vorthak warrior wore the black armor of the Empire, with red markings that showed their rank and battle experience. A junior officer approached Veltar with careful steps. The young warrior kept his head down as he spoke. "Commander, our scouts have found something unusual in the outer rim systems." Veltar turned his cold yellow eyes toward the officer. "What kind of unusual?" "A new species, sir. They call themselves humans. They live on a single world in a system with one yellow star. Our scouts say they have primitive technology, but they refuse to surrender." Veltar's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. In 3 millennia, every species had either surrendered immediately or been crushed within days. The idea that primitives would refuse the Empire was almost amusing. "Send War Chief Morthag to deal with them," Veltar said. "One ship should be enough." Far across the galaxy, on a blue and green world called Earth, Dr. Kim Do-hyun was working, late in his laboratory. As Earth's leading expert on theoretical physics, he had spent years wondering if humanity was alone in the universe. He never expected the answer to arrive so suddenly. The alarm bells began ringing at exactly 3:47 a.m. local time. Do-hyun looked up from his computer screen as emergency broadcasts filled every television and radio on the planet. The message was simple but terrifying. Alien ships had appeared in Earth's solar system. President Park Ji-ho was awakened by his security team and rushed to the emergency command center deep beneath the capital city. The room was filled with military officers, scientists, and government officials, all staring at the large screens showing radar data from around the world. General Lee So-hee pointed at the largest blip on the screen. "Sir, the main vessel is approximately 50 kilometers long. It appeared near Jupiter 3 hours ago and is moving toward Earth at incredible speed. We estimate it will reach our orbit in 6 days." Park Ji-ho felt his mouth go dry. 50 kilometers long. Earth's largest ships were barely 1 kilometer from end to end. "How many ships are there?" "Just one, sir. But our deep space telescopes show it could carry thousands of smaller vessels inside." On the alien ship, War Chief Morthag prepared for what he expected to be a routine conquest. He had conquered 47 worlds for the Empire. Each victory had followed the same pattern: arrive, demand surrender, and either accept submission or destroy all resistance. Morthag was larger than most Vorthak, with scars across his gray skin from battles against the few species foolish enough to fight. His red eyes glowed with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. The primitive humans would surrender like all the others, or they would die. It made no difference. To him, Dr. Choi Min-ho worked frantically in Seoul's Institute for Advanced Sciences. As Earth's best expert on alien technology theories, he had been called in to help prepare for first contact. But this was nothing like the peaceful meetings he had imagined in his research papers. "The energy readings are massive," Min-ho told the assembled team of scientists. "Whatever powers that ship, it's beyond anything we understand. Our best nuclear reactors produce a fraction of what their engines must generate just to move something that size." The ship reached Earth orbit exactly when the computers predicted. It was even more terrifying up close. The crystal hull reflected Earth's sunlight in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Smaller ships, each one still larger than Earth space stations, emerged from the main vessel like insects from a hive. President Park Ji-ho stood in the communications center, surrounded by translators, military advisors, and diplomats. Nobody knew what to expect. Earth had prepared first contact protocols, but they were designed for peaceful meetings, not for massive warships appearing in their sky. The alien transmission came without warning. The voice that spoke was deep and cold, translated by their computers into dozens of human languages simultaneously. Primitive humans of the third planet, I am War Chief Morthag of the Vorthak Empire. Your world has been selected for inclusion into our domain. You have one rotation of your planet to consider our generous offer. Park Jiho stepped forward to the microphone. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. This is President Park Jiho, speaking for the people of Earth. What exactly are you offering? Submission or death, Morthag replied. Your species will serve the Empire, providing resources and labor as directed. In return, you will be allowed to live under our protection. This offer has been made to 3,000 worlds. All have accepted. The communication channel closed, leaving the command center in shocked silence. Lieutenant Commander Lee Sohee was the first to speak. Sir, we need to begin evacuation procedures immediately. Get as many people as possible to the underground bunkers, but Park Jiho was thinking about something else. Wait, he said. Did anyone else notice what he said? 3,000 worlds, all accepted. That means no one has ever said no to them. Dr. Kim Do-yoon, who had been listening from the corner of the room, stepped forward. Mr. President, maybe that's exactly why we should say no. The room erupted in arguments. Some officials wanted to surrender immediately to save human lives. Others insisted that humanity should fight even if it meant extinction. But Park Jiho was thinking about the war chief's words. Every species had surrendered. Every single one. That meant the Vorthak had never faced real resistance. They had never learned how to fight an enemy that refused to give up. Maybe that was humanity's only advantage. War Chief Morthag waited on his ship, confident that the Aura humans would surrender before the deadline. In his experience, primitive species always chose life over pride. The idea that they might choose to fight never crossed his mind. But on Earth, President Park Jiho was about to make a decision that would change the galaxy forever. The deadline came and went like a storm passing over Earth. President Park Jiho had given his answer to the galaxy. Humanity would not surrender. War Chief Morthag received the message with something between amusement and annoyance. No species had ever been foolish enough to refuse the Empire. Begin the attack, Morthag ordered his crew. Make it quick. I want to be back in Imperial space before the next moon cycle. Captain Yoon Haejin watched the alien ships move toward Luna Station from her command center. She had served in Earth's Space Navy for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Vorthak vessels moved with deadly grace, their crystal hulls catching the light from Earth's moon. All stations prepare for incoming hostiles, Haejin spoke into her communicator. Remember, we're not trying to win. We're trying to make them pay for every meter. The first Vorthak attack ships reached Luna Station within hours. Their weapons were unlike anything humans had seen before. Beams of pure energy cut through the station's metal walls like paper, but the humans had prepared surprises of their own. Sergeant Major Kang Woo-jin led his Marines through the twisting corridors of Luna Station as Vorthak boarding parties broke through the hull. The aliens were tall and strong, but they moved in predictable patterns. They expected their enemies to run and hide. Instead, the human Marines attacked from unexpected angles. Woo-jin's team used the station's maintenance tunnels to appear behind enemy lines. They set traps in doorways and used the station's own systems as weapons. These humans fight strangely, reported one Vorthak warrior to his commander. They do not follow proper battle formations. They attack from directions that make no tactical sense. War Chief Morthag frowned at the report. The station should have fallen within minutes, not hours. But human resistance was stronger than expected. More concerning was the strange way they fought. Instead of trying to protect their important positions, humans seemed to attack wherever the Vorthak felt safe. On Earth's surface, Colonel Bae Minji watched the first Vorthak ground forces land in the fields outside Seoul. The alien transports were massive, but they landed in open areas where their size would be an advantage. That was their first mistake. Minji had spent months preparing for this moment. Her soldiers were hidden in the city, not standing in neat lines in the fields. When the Vorthak forces marched toward Seoul, they found empty streets and silent buildings. Then, the attacks began. Human soldiers appeared on rooftops, in sewers, and from behind parked vehicles. They fired quick bursts at the aliens and then disappeared before return fire could find them. The Vorthak had superior weapons and armor, but they could not fight enemies they could not see. "This is not how war should be fought," complained Vorthak Commander Gethmore as his forces struggled to advance through the city. "Where are their battle lines? Where are their defensive positions?" Dr. Choi Min-ho worked day and night in his hidden laboratory, studying pieces of Vorthak technology that human forces had captured. What he discovered changed everything he thought. He knew about their enemies. "Their neural patterns are completely rigid," Min-ho explained to the Emergency War Council.
The Vorthak think in straight lines. They expect battles to follow specific rules. When those rules are broken, they become confused and make mistakes. Admiral Song Tae-hoon listened carefully to the scientist's report. As Earth's highest military
Commander, he needed every advantage he could find. What kind of mistakes? They group their ships in standard formations that leave specific weak points. They land troops in areas that look tactically sound, but become traps if the enemy doesn't. Fight conventionally. Most importantly, they cannot adapt quickly to new situations. Song Tae-hoon smiled for the first time since the war began. Then we need to make sure every situation is new. The first month of war was unlike anything in Vorthak history. What should have been a simple conquest became a grinding battle of attrition. Human forces rarely won direct confrontations, but they made the aliens pay dearly for every victory. War Chief Morthag found himself sending reports to the Empire that he had never imagined writing. The humans refused to surrender despite massive casualties. They employ tactics that violate all accepted principles of warfare. They use their own cities as weapons, turning every building into a potential ambush point. On Luna Station, Captain Yoon Haejin's forces finally fell back to the station's core. But even in retreat, they left surprises for their enemies. Explosive traps, rigged computer systems, and blocked passages turned the Vorthak victory into a costly nightmare. Sergeant Major Kang Woojin led the final evacuation of surviving personnel. As his team prepared to detonate the station's reactor, he spoke to his remaining Marines. "Remember, we're not dying for nothing. Every hour we hold them here is another hour for Earth to prepare. Every Vorthak soldier we stop is one less attacking our home." The explosion of Luna Station could be seen from Earth's surface. But instead of crushing human morale, it seemed to make the resistance stronger. News of the Marines' sacrifice spread across the planet, inspiring millions of people to join the fight. Colonel Bae Minji received reports from resistance cells in every major city. The Vorthak had superior firepower, but they were learning that humans would not stay conquered. Every building they captured had to be held by force. Every street they controlled could become a battlefield again at any moment. Dr. Choi Min-ho made another important discovery as he studied captured Vorthak equipment. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also completely standardized. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of equipment is built the same way. They've never needed to innovate because they've never faced real opposition. President Park Ji-ho listened to the reports from around the world. Human losses were terrible, but the Vorthak were losing too. More importantly, they were losing in ways they had never experienced before. "How long can we keep this up?" asked one of his advisors. Park Ji-ho looked at the data from the first month of war. The Vorthak had lost more soldiers than in their previous 50 conquests combined. They had expected to spend days conquering Earth. Instead, they were settling in for a siege that could last years. "Long enough," Park Ji-ho said. "They came here expecting us to be like every other species they've conquered. But we're not like anyone else. We're human." War Chief Morthag stared out at Earth from his command ship, trying to understand what had gone wrong. This should have been simple. Instead, he was facing the first real war the Vorthak Empire had fought in centuries. For the first time in his long military career, Morthag began to wonder if victory was certain. 6 months had passed since the war began, and Emperor Zethkar was growing impatient. From his crystal throne on the Vorthak homeworld, he had watched War Chief Morthag's reports with increasing displeasure. A single primitive planet was holding back the might of the Empire. Summon the 5th and 7th fleets, the Emperor commanded his advisors. If one ship cannot handle these humans, then we will send 100. The Emperor's massive form dominated the throne room. He was larger than any other Vorthak, with golden markings that showed his supreme rank. For 3,000 years, his family had ruled an empire that stretched across the galaxy. No primitive species had ever dared to resist for more than a few days. Major General Park In-hai stood in the ruins of what used to be Tokyo, coordinating the Terra Defense Corps. The city had been devastated by Vorthak orbital bombardment, but the humans had learned to use the rubble as shelter. Every destroyed building became a fortress. "The new weapons are ready for testing," reported Dr. Nam Yuna, Earth's leading military engineer. She had spent months combining human creativity with captured Vorthak technology. The results were crude but effective. Park In-hai examined the hybrid weapons her team had created. They were ugly compared to the elegant Vorthak designs, but they had one advantage. They were unpredictable. "How many can we produce?" "Enough to equip every resistance cell on the planet within 2 months," Nam Yuna replied. "The Vorthak technology is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly wasteful. We can build 10 of our weapons with the same resources it takes them to build one of theirs." Captain Oh Sunwoo prepared his crew for humanity's first deep space mission. His ship had once been a cargo hauler, carrying supplies between Earth and Mars. Now it was humanity's first real warship, equipped with experimental weapons and staffed by volunteers who knew they might never return home. Lieutenant Shin Hayeri checked the navigation systems one final time. She had been an astrophysicist before the war, studying distant stars and dreaming of peaceful exploration. Now she calculated attack routes and weapon trajectories. "The target is a Vorthak supply convoy 12 light hours from Earth," Hayeri reported. "Intelligence says it's carrying reinforcements for their ground forces." Chief Engineer Jeon Dongwon looked up from his improvised weapon systems. "The hybrid cannons are ready, but remember, we can only fire them 3 times before the power systems overload. After that, we're defenseless." Sunwoo nodded grimly. Human ships could not match Vorthak vessels in direct combat, but they did not need to win fair fights. They just needed to make the aliens pay a price for every victory. The human fleet launched its first strike against Vorthak supply lines 2 weeks later. 12 converted cargo ships and mining vessels attacked a convoy of massive alien transports. The battle lasted only minutes, but the results shocked both sides. The human ships fought like nothing the Vorthak had ever seen. Instead of forming proper battle lines, they scattered in all directions. When Vorthak warships moved to engage one target, 2 others would attack from behind. When their weapons overloaded, human ships would ram the enemy vessels instead of retreating. Commander Veltar observed the battle from his flagship, trying to understand what he was seeing. "They are using damaged ships as weapons. They are steering vessels with no power directly into our hulls. This makes no tactical sense." But the results were undeniable. The human attack destroyed 3 supply ships and damaged 2 escort vessels. The improvised human fleet was completely destroyed, but they had achieved their goal. For the first time in Vorthak history, a supply convoy had been stopped by inferior forces. Captain Oh Sunwoo's ship was the last to fall. As Vorthak fighters closed in around his damaged vessel, he activated the final weapon his engineers had prepared. The ship's reactor went critical, creating an explosion that took down 2 enemy fighters and damaged a cruiser. Ambassador Veltar sent his report to Emperor Zethkar with growing concern. "The humans do not fight to win individual battles. They fight to cause maximum damage before their inevitable defeat. Each engagement costs us more than it costs them." On Earth, Dr. Kim Do-hyun analyzed every piece of data from the space battle. Working with resistance cells around the planet, he began to understand something important about their enemies. The Vorthak were not just technologically superior, they were psychologically predictable. They follow the same patterns in every battle, Do-hyun explained to President Park Ji-ho. Formation A for ship-to-ship combat, Formation B for planetary assault, Formation C for convoy protection. They have been using these same tactics for thousands of years because they always worked. Park Ji-ho studied the tactical displays showing Vorthak fleet movements. What happens if we force them into situations where their standard formations don't work? Then they have to improvise, Do-hyun replied, and they are very bad at improvising. The second wave of human attacks came from directions the Vorthak never expected. Instead of striking at military targets, human forces began attacking the Wam Empire's administrative centers. They captured communication relays, destroyed supply depots, and disrupted the complex logistics that kept the Vorthak war machine functioning. Major General Park In-hai led a raid on the Vorthak command center in what used to be London. Her forces used the city's subway tunnels to approach the heavily defended alien position. When they emerged directly beneath the enemy facility, the Vorthak guards were completely unprepared. The attack lasted only 20 minutes, but it destroyed months of intelligence data and killed several high-ranking Vorthak officers. More importantly, it proved that no alien position was truly safe from human attack. War Chief Morthag found himself fighting a war unlike anything in Vorthak military history. His forces controlled Earth's major cities, but humans continued to resist from underground bunkers, hidden bases, and mobile camps. Every victory seemed to make the humans more determined rather than less. They learn from each defeat, Morthag reported to his superiors. Every tactic we use against them, they find ways to counter. Every weapon we deploy, they eventually find ways to steal or destroy. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered. The most disturbing reports came from other parts of the galaxy. News of human resistance was spreading to other species within the Empire. Worlds that had been conquered centuries ago were beginning to whisper about the small planet that had said no to the Vorthak. Emperor Zethkar received troubling intelligence from his secret police. Several client species are asking questions about the war, reported his intelligence chief. They want to know how a primitive species can resist the Empire for so long. For 3,000 years, the Vorthak Empire had maintained control through the belief that resistance was impossible. Every species that joined the Empire did so because they believed the Vorthak were invincible. If that belief began to crumble, the entire Empire could collapse. Dr. Choi Min-ho made another breakthrough in his analysis of Vorthak technology and psychology. Working with captured prisoners and intercepted communications, he discovered the Empire's greatest weakness. They have never learned how to fight a war of attrition, Min-ho explained to the resistance leadership. Every battle in their history has been decided quickly. They do not know how to maintain morale during a long conflict. More importantly, their client species have never seen them struggle before. President Park Ji-ho looked at the global situation reports. Human casualties were enormous, but they were still fighting. More importantly, they were still learning. Every month of resistance made humanity stronger and more dangerous. The war had taught humans things about themselves that peacetime never could. They had discovered that they could adapt to any situation, survive any disaster, and continue fighting even when victory seemed impossible. On his command ship, War Chief Morthag stared at Earth with new understanding. This was not a conquest anymore. It was a test of will between two completely different ways of thinking. The Vorthak fought to maintain their dominance. The humans fought simply to survive. And survival, Morthag was beginning to realize, might be the stronger motivation. 2 years of continuous warfare had changed everything. Earth was a scarred and burning world, but humanity had not surrendered. The Vorthak Empire found itself in the longest military conflict in its recorded history, and Emperor Zethkar was growing desperate. "Deploy the planet killers," the Emperor commanded from his crystal throne. His golden markings had grown darker over the months, showing the stress of a war that should have ended in days. "If we cannot conquer these humans, we will erase them completely." The order sent shockwaves through the Vorthak High Command. Planet killer weapons had not been used in over 1,000 years. They were tools of last resort, designed to destroy entire worlds when conquest was impossible. Captain Lim Gyeonwoo received the intelligence report in his hidden bunker beneath the ruins of Seoul. The massive Vorthak dreadnought carrying the Chi Planet killer weapon would arrive in Earth orbit within 72 hours. After that, humanity would have perhaps 6 hours before their world was reduced to radioactive dust. We need that ship, Jianwu told his assembled team. Not destroyed. Captured. It's the only way we can turn this war around. Corporal Ko Ji-wan, Earth's best demolitions expert, studied the technical specifications of a Vorthak dreadnought. The ship was 20 kilometers long and protected by energy shields that could stop entire fleets. Getting aboard would be almost impossible. Fighting their way to the control room would be suicide. Almost impossible and suicide, Ji-wan said with a grim smile. Sounds like a job for humans. Petty Officer Huang Suman worked with the remnants of Earth's communication network to coordinate the most desperate plan in human history. Every remaining ship, every surviving soldier, and every operational weapon on the planet would be committed to one final battle. The Vorthak dreadnought arrived exactly when predicted, its massive bulk blotting out the stars above Earth. The planet killer weapon charged slowly, drawing power from the ship's massive reactors. In 6 hours, it would fire a beam of pure destruction that would crack Earth's crust and boil away its oceans. Every human on the planet knew what was coming. Instead of causing panic, the knowledge seemed to give them new strength. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. Captain Lim Jianwu led the boarding assault in a converted mining ship that barely qualified as spaceworthy. His team of 40 volunteers had trained for months in captured Vorthak vessels, learning the layout of alien ships and the weaknesses in their security systems. The battle around the dreadnought was the largest space combat in human history. Every surviving Earth vessel attacked the massive Vorthak ship, not trying to destroy it but to create enough chaos for Jianwu's team to slip through the defenses. Human fighters, many of them piloted by civilians with only weeks of training, threw themselves at Vorthak escort ships. Mining vessels and cargo haulers rammed enemy cruisers. The space around Earth became a swirling chaos of explosions and debris. In the confusion, Jianwu's ship attached itself to the dreadnought's hull. Like a parasite, his team cut through the outer armor using captured Vorthak cutting tools, entering the ship through what the aliens considered an impossible route. Dr. Kim Do-hyun worked frantically in his underground laboratory, coordinating with resistance cells across the planet. His breakthrough in understanding Vorthak command networks had revealed something crucial. All their ships were connected to a central control system. If we can access the dreadnought's main computer, Do-hyun explained over the emergency communication network, we can potentially disable their entire fleet. The information reached Jianwu's team as they fought their way through the alien ships' corridors. The dreadnought's interior was a maze of crystal passages and energy conduits, designed by minds that thought in patterns humans could barely understand. Corporal Ko Ji-wan set explosive charges at key structural points as the team advanced, but their real target was the ship's command center, where the central computer controlled not just the planet killer weapon, but the entire Vorthak fleet in Earth orbit. General Yu Kyung-ho coordinated the surface assault from his command bunker in the Himalayas. While Jianwu's team fought aboard the dreadnought, human forces around the planet launched simultaneous attacks on every Vorthak installation they could reach. The attacks were not designed to win territory. They were designed to create maximum confusion and force the aliens to divide their attention. Every Vorthak soldier dealing with surface battles was one less defender aboard their ships. On the dreadnought, Jianwu's team reached the command center just as the planet killer weapon began its final charging sequence. The massive chamber was filled with holographic displays showing the energy building toward Earth's destruction. Petty Officer Huang Suman connected her portable computer to the Vorthak systems, using programs that Dr. Kim Do-hyun had written based on captured alien technology. The interface was alien and confusing, but she had trained for months to understand it. "I'm in," Suman reported as her fingers flew across the keyboard. "But the weapon sequence is locked. I can't stop it from here." Jianwu looked around the command center, searching for any weakness they could exploit. The Vorthak had built their systems to be perfect and unbreakable. That was their weakness. They had never planned for what would happen if someone got inside their defenses. "Can you access their communication network?" Jianwu asked. Suman nodded. her hands still working frantically. Yes, but what good will that do? Dr. Doyun said all their ships are connected. If we can send the right signal through their network, maybe we can disable their entire fleet. The idea was insane. It was also humanity's only chance. Back on Earth, Dr. Kim Do-hyun received Suman's transmission and immediately understood what Geonwoo was planning. The Vorthak command network was designed to coordinate thousands of ships across the galaxy. But it was also completely centralized, which meant it had a single point of failure. Send this code, Do-hyun transmitted to the Dreadnought. It's a virus I designed based on Vorthak programming languages. If it works, it will cascade through their entire network. Suman uploaded the virus just as Vorthak security forces broke into the command center. Geonwoo's team fought desperately to buy her the few seconds she needed to complete the transmission. The virus spread through the Vorthak network like wildfire. Every ship connected to the central command system began experiencing critical failures. Navigation computers crashed, weapon systems shut down, and life support systems began failing across the entire fleet. Most importantly, the planet killer weapon lost power and went dormant, its deadly charge dissipating harmlessly into space. War Chief Morthag watched in horror as his fleet began falling apart around him. Ships that had never malfunctioned in centuries of service were now drifting helplessly in space. The virus had not just disabled their weapons, it had crippled their ability to fight or even retreat. Captain Lim Geonwoo's team did not survive their mission. As Vorthak security forces overwhelmed their position, Corporal Kojiwan detonated the charges she had placed throughout the ship. The explosion tore through the Dreadnought's hull, ensuring that the planet killer weapon could never be repaired. But their sacrifice had achieved something unprecedented. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Vorthak fleet had been defeated, not by superior firepower but by superior thinking. The news of the victory spread across Earth within hours. Humanity had faced extinction and found a way to survive. More importantly, they had proven that the Vorthak were not invincible. They could be outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and defeated. Emperor Zethkar received the reports from Earth with growing alarm. The loss of an entire fleet was bad enough, but the method of defeat was even more disturbing. If humans could disable Vorthak technology so easily, what did that mean for the rest of the Empire? Dr. Choi Minho analyzed the data from the virus attack and made a discovery that would change the course of the war. The Vorthak network was not just used for military coordination. It connected every aspect of their civilization, from government, computers to commercial shipping to civilian communication. We didn't just hack their fleet, Minho realized with growing excitement. We hacked their entire civilization. The implications were staggering. If humans could access the Vorthak central network, they could potentially bring down the entire empire from within. The species that had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia had built their greatest weakness into the foundation of their civilization. President Park Ji-ho looked at the reports from around the world. Human casualties had been enormous, but they had survived another day. More importantly, they had learned something crucial about their enemies. The Vorthak were not gods. They were not invincible. They were simply another species that had grown too comfortable with their power and comfort, as humanity was proving every day, was the enemy of survival. War Chief Morthag stared at the disabled remains of his fleet and finally understood what he was truly fighting. This was not a war between advanced and primitive civilizations. This was a war between rigid thinking and adaptive thinking. And rigid thinking was losing. 3 years of war had scattered humanity across dozens of star systems, but they had not been broken. Admiral Ro Hunsu commanded the largest human fleet in history from the bridge of a captured Vorthak cruiser. The ship still bore alien markings, but it flew under Earth's flag now. The human fleet was a strange collection of vessels, captured alien warships, converted civilian craft, and new ships built with hybrid technology. They looked nothing like the elegant formations of the Vorthak Empire, but they were effective in ways the aliens could never predict. Admiral, we're receiving reports from all sectors, reported his communication officer. The liberation of Kepler 442b is complete. The Vorthak garrison surrendered after their supply lines were cut. Ro Hyunsu studied the tactical display showing human operations across known space. What had started as a desperate fight for survival had become something much larger. Humanity was now liberating other species from Vorthak rule. Intelligence Officer Commander An Seo-young had spent 6 months disguised as a refugee on a Vorthak administrative world. Her reports painted a picture of an empire in crisis. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained order for millennia was beginning to collapse under the strain of a war they could not understand. The client species are organizing in secret, Seo-young reported during a encrypted transmission. They've heard about Earth's resistance, and they're beginning to believe that the Vorthak can be defeated. Some are already preparing for rebellion. The Vorthak homeworlds were experiencing something they had not known for thousands of years: doubt. Reports from the Earth War had been carefully censored, but rumors spread anyway. How could a single primitive planet resist the Empire for 3 years? War Chief Morthag found himself in an impossible position. The war against humanity had cost him most of his fleet and nearly all of his experienced officers. Worse, he was beginning to doubt the strategies that had served the Empire for millennia. The humans have taken 17 star systems in the past month, Morthag reported to Emperor Zethkar. They move faster than our intelligence can track them, and they fight in ways that make no sense according to military doctrine, Emperor. Zethkar's rage was terrible to behold. His golden markings had faded to a sickly yellow, and his voice carried the fury of a ruler who saw his power slipping away. Then we will change our approach. You are relieved of command. I will lead this war myself. The Emperor's decision to take personal command sent shockwaves through the Vorthak military hierarchy. But Morthag felt something unexpected: relief. For the first time in his military career, he was glad to give up responsibility for a battle he could not win. Captain Im Jae-ho led the human task force that liberated the first alien world from Vorthak control. The Kethmai had been enslaved. For over 2 centuries, their entire civilization reduced to mining operations that fed the Empire's endless appetite for resources. The liberation of Kethmai Prime was unlike any battle in Vorthak history. Instead of fighting to conquer, humans fought to free. When the Vorthak garrison realized they were outnumbered and surrounded, they expected to be executed according to the Empire's own brutal traditions. Instead, the humans offered them a choice: surrender and be treated as prisoners of war, or continue fighting and face the consequences. Most chose surrender. For the first time in their lives, Vorthak soldiers experienced the human concept of mercy. The Kethmai people emerged from their underground mines to see sunlight that had been denied to them for generations. Their first sight was human soldiers removing their helmets and offering food and medical supplies to alien civilians. "Why do you help us?" asked Elder Kethtal, the oldest surviving member of his species. "We are not your people." Captain Im Jae-ho looked at the alien elder with the same respect he would show any human. "Because freedom is not something that belongs to one species. It belongs to everyone." The news of Kethmai's liberation spread across the galaxy faster than the Empire could suppress it. Species that had been conquered centuries ago began to remember what independence felt like. The carefully maintained facade of Vorthak invincibility was crumbling. Dr. Choi Min-ho completed his most important work in a hidden laboratory on Titan. His analysis of Vorthak psychology and command structure had revealed the critical weakness that could end the war. The Empire's strength came from its rigid hierarchy, but that same hierarchy was also its fatal flaw. Remove the command structure, and their entire military becomes paralyzed, Min-ho explained to the War Council. The Vorthak have trained for thousands of years to follow orders without question. They literally do not know how to think for themselves in combat situations. President Park Ji-ho, now governing Earth from a series of hidden bunkers, listened to the scientists' report with growing hope. "What do you need to make this work?" "Access to their central command network," Min-ho replied. "The same network we hacked during the Dreadnought battle. But this time, instead of disabling their ships, we target their command hierarchy itself." The plan was audacious beyond anything humanity had attempted before. Instead of destroying Vorthak forces, They would capture the Empire's command centers and turn the aliens' own rigid training against them. Admiral Ro Hyunsu coordinated the largest military operation in human history. Simultaneous strikes would target Vorthak command centers across 50 star systems. The attacks had to be perfectly timed, or the Empire would have time to adapt their defenses. Emperor Zethkar prepared to personally lead the final assault against humanity from his massive flagship. The vessel was larger than any ship the Empire had ever built, carrying enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. But even as he prepared for victory, reports reached him of human attacks across the galaxy. Impossible, the Emperor snarled as he read the intelligence reports. How can they attack 50 systems simultaneously? They lack the ships, the personnel, the coordination. What the Emperor did not understand was that humans had learned to fight differently than any species the Vorthak had encountered. Instead of massive fleets and overwhelming force, they used small teams, local allies, and precision strikes against critical targets. The first command center fell within hours. Commander An Seoyoung led a team of human special forces and Kethmai, rebels in a lightning assault on the regional command post for the Vega sector. With the command structure gone, thousands of Vorthak ships across dozens of worlds simply stopped fighting, waiting for orders that would never come. Captain Im Jae-ho's Liberation Fleet moved from world to world, not conquering but freeing. Each liberated species provided new allies, new intelligence, and new reasons to fight against the Empire. The rebellion was growing faster than the Vorthak could suppress it. The most important battle took place in the Empire's capital system. A small human infiltration team, led by survivors from Earth's original resistance, penetrated the Imperial Command Center itself. Their mission was not to capture territory, but to access the central computer network that controlled the entire Empire. Dr. Kim Do-hyun's virus had evolved over 3 years of continuous development. The new version did not just disable Vorthak systems. It rewrote their command protocols, sending contradictory orders throughout the Imperial fleet and creating chaos in every corner of the galaxy. Emperor Zethkar watched his empire collapse in real time. Fleets that had served loyally for centuries suddenly received orders to attack each other. Administrative centers shut down as their computers became hopelessly confused. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained order for 3 millennia turned into a source of paralysis and confusion. War Chief Morthag, relieved of his command but still monitoring the situation, understood what was happening before anyone else. The humans had not just defeated the Vorthak military. They had turned the Empire's greatest strength into its greatest weakness. They learned how we think, Morthag told his former officers as they watched the Empire burn. Then they used our own thoughts against us. The collapse of the Vorthak Empire happened faster than anyone had imagined possible. Within 6 months of the coordinated human assault, the 3,000-year-old galactic government had fractured into dozens of independent systems. President Park Ji-ho received reports from across the galaxy of worlds declaring independence, former client species forming new alliances, and Vorthak officials surrendering to human forces. The war that had started as a fight for survival had become a revolution that freed half the galaxy. But the cost had been enormous. Earth was devastated, its population reduced by more than half. Humanity had paid a terrible price for their victory, but they had also achieved something that no other species had ever managed. They had brought down the most powerful empire in galactic history. Dr. Choi Min-ho looked at the final reports from his laboratory on Titan. The Vorthak Empire was gone, but the galaxy was not at peace. Dozens of species were now free for the first time in centuries, and they would need help learning how to govern themselves. Admiral Ro Hyunsu understood that humanity's real work was just beginning. They had won the war, but now 4 years after the first Vorthak ships appeared in Earth's sky, Ambassador Veltar walked through the ruins of Sol toward the human government complex. The former Vorthak fleet commander now carried documents of surrender instead of weapons of war. The galaxy's most powerful empire had been brought to its knees by a species they had dismissed as primitive. President Park Ji-ho waited in a simple conference room, surrounded by advisors who had spent years fighting in bunkers and hidden shelters. The contrast with Vorthak imperial ceremonies could not have been greater. There was no crystal throne, no golden markings of rank, just tired humans who had refused to surrender. The Vorthak Empire formally requests terms for ending hostilities, Veltar announced, placing the surrender documents on the scarred wooden table. We acknowledge defeat and seek mercy from the human government. Park Jiho looked at the alien, diplomat with eyes that had seen too much death and destruction. We don't want your surrender, he said quietly. We want your cooperation. The galaxy needs to be rebuilt, and that's going to take all of us working together. Colonel Bei Minji, now promoted to Planetary Defense Commander, oversaw the final liberation of Earth's occupied territories. The few remaining Vorthak holdouts emerged from their fortified positions with white flags, their fighting spirit broken by years of losing to an enemy they could never understand. The alien soldiers, who had once seemed so terrifying, now looked small and defeated. Their elegant weapons lay abandoned, their crystalline armor cracked and stained. They had been trained to conquer weaker species, not to fight a war of survival against adaptive opponents. It's strange, Minji told her aide as they watched the last Vorthak transport leave Earth's surface. 4 years ago they seemed like gods. Now they just look like people who made bad choices. The transformation of the galaxy happened faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly found themselves free to make their own decisions. The rigid hierarchy that had maintained Vorthak rule was replaced by something completely new: voluntary cooperation. Captain Yoon Haejin commanded a mixed fleet of human, Kethmai, and reformed Vorthak vessels as they patrolled the former Empire's core worlds. Many Vorthak systems had requested human protection from their own former military leaders, who refused to accept the new reality. Strange how things change, Haejin remarked to her mixed-species crew. 2 years ago we were trying to kill each other. Now we're working together to keep the peace. The crew of her flagship represented the new galaxy taking shape. Humans worked alongside former enemies, sharing knowledge and learning from each other. The rigid separation between species that had defined the Empire was giving way to something unprecedented: genuine cooperation. Human diplomatic teams, led by Ambassador Kim Seo-hyun, worked tirelessly to establish the new galactic cooperative. Unlike the Empire's rule through force, the cooperative operated on principles that humanity had learned through centuries of their own conflicts: compromise, representation, and mutual benefit. Every species gets a voice, Seo-hyun explained, to the assembled delegates from across the galaxy. No one rules over anyone else. We work together or we don't work at all. The concept was revolutionary to species that had known only imperial hierarchy for thousands of years. But the human example had shown that cooperation could be more powerful than domination. Dr. Kim Do-hyun published his comprehensive study of the war's outcome, a document that would become required reading in schools across the galaxy. His analysis revealed why the most dominant species in galactic history had been defeated by relative newcomers. The Vorthak Empire fell because they confused strength with inflexibility, Do-hyun wrote. They had perfected the art of conquering weaker civilizations, but they never learned how to survive stronger opposition. When they encountered humanity, they faced a species that had mastered the most important skill in the universe: adaptation. The Mai study became the foundation for a new field of interspecies psychology. Understanding how different species thought and reacted became crucial for maintaining peace in a galaxy where former enemies now had to live as neighbors. Dr. Choi Min-ho established the Galactic Institute for Adaptive Sciences on the rebuilt Luna Station. Scientists from dozens of species worked together to ensure that the rigid thinking that had characterized the Empire never took hold again. The moment any civilization believes it has found the perfect way to do something, it begins to die. Min-ho taught his mixed species students. Survival requires constant change, constant learning, and constant adaptation to new challenges. The most profound changes happened in Vorthak society itself. Ambassador Veltar served as cultural liaison, helping his own people understand the new galaxy they now lived in. Many Vorthak struggled with the concept of equality, having been raised to believe in natural hierarchy. We were taught that strength meant dominance, Veltar explained to a gathering of former Imperial officers. But the humans showed us that true strength means resilience. They were never stronger than us in any single battle, but they were stronger where it mattered most. They refused to break. Some former Vorthak officials could not accept the new reality. They retreated to isolated systems, trying to maintain the old ways. But their rigid thinking made them irrelevant in a galaxy that had learned to value flexibility over force. 10 years after the war's end, the Galactic Cooperative had become the new normal. Trade flowed freely between former enemies. Scientific knowledge was shared openly, and conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than conquest. President Park Ji-ho, now elderly and gray-haired, stood in the memorial garden built on the site where Seoul had once burned. The names of billions of humans who had died in the war were carved into black stone walls, but the garden itself was full of life. Plants from dozens of worlds growing together under Earth's sun. They didn't die for victory, Park Ji-ho said, during the memorial ceremony. They died for the chance to prove that there was a better way to live. And in the end, that's exactly what they accomplished. Captain Im Jae-ho, now Admiral of the Cooperative Defense Fleet, commanded ships crewed by dozens of species. His flagship was a new class of vessel designed by human, Kethmai, and reformed Vorthak engineers working together. It was more advanced than anything the Empire had ever built, because it combined the best ideas from multiple civilizations. The old Empire built ships to conquer, Jae-ho explained to visiting dignitaries. We build ships to protect. That difference in purpose makes all the difference in design. The galaxy had learned humanity's most important lesson, that diversity was strength, not weakness. The Empire had demanded uniformity and gotten stagnation. The Cooperative encouraged difference and achieved innovation. Dr. Choi Min-ho's final report on the war contained an observation that would define interspecies relations for generations to come. The Vorthak Empire fell not because humans were better warriors, but because they were better learners. In a universe that never stops changing, the ability to adapt is the only permanent advantage. Ambassador Veltar often reflected on the irony of his position. He had once served an empire that believed strength came from never changing. Now he helped maintain a civilization built on the principle that change was the only constant worth trusting. My people ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, Veltar told students at the Diplomatic Academy. But in all that time, we never learned the most important lesson in the universe. It doesn't matter how powerful you become if you start a fight with someone who refuses to lose. The war's greatest victory was not military but philosophical. Humanity had proven that survival was more important than dominance, that adaptation was more valuable than tradition, and that cooperation was stronger than conquest. In the end, the galaxy learned a truth that would guide them for millennia to come. The species that wins is not the one that never changes, but the one that never stops changing. And sometimes the most important battles are won not by those who are strongest, but by those who simply refuse to give up. The Vorthak Empire had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. But fear, humanity had proven, was no match for hope. And hope, unlike empires, could not be conquered.